Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. We are here today at the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage, and we're here with Les Kelen, the Executive Director of the Center for Documentary Expression and Art, organizer of this amazing exhibition, This Light of Ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. And first of all, Les, welcome to Cleveland, but tell me the obvious first question. I know what an activist is. I know what a photographer is. What's an activist photographer?
Well, you want the simple or the long definition? Activist photographers were photographers that essentially became members of the movement. They came into the movement, they embedded themselves, the common term that we use these days, and we became movement members. Some of them stayed in the movement for a few months, some stayed as long as 4 and 5 years. The long answer probably has to also look at the fact that these people were organizers. They saw themselves not as merely as photographers, but people who used their cameras to get their messages out to the community and also to galvanize community interest in the movement, which was building both a local and a national audience.
And when you talk about the movement, set the scene for us, the Civil Rights Movement. Not everybody lived through it. What was it really like in this country?
Well, I wasn't in the South during that time, so I came later. And one of the reasons that I did this is this exhibit, because I wanted to know more about the movement. So essentially, what you're looking at with the Civil Rights Movement is a kind of a social eruption in this country that began probably after the Second World War and began going through the 50s. And essentially, African Americans have been fighting for freedom in this country probably from the time that they landed on these shores and were enslaved. But from periodically, essentially what happened is that their efforts became galvanized and became more like social movements. So in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, throughout the 50s, and definitely throughout the 60s and 70s, this effort that we call today the Civil Rights Movement, which is basically a struggle for freedom, took on much greater social proportions, galvanized the country, involved young people in the South, young people in the North, and also took on both political and legal ramifications. So it went into the courts, it went into the legislature, it affected the United States president. It basically embroiled the entire country in the effort to achieve first-class citizenship and human rights for African Americans. The effort to get the word out on what was going on at that time was particularly critical because a lot of the stuff that you see here was hidden from sight. And a lot of the difficulties that people face, particularly police intimidation, extra-legal intimidation, Klan intimidation, and also the positive aspects of organizing were all hidden because if photographers came for short periods of time, they weren't depicting that. So what we're seeing here is sort of the day-to-day life of the movement during a 3-year time period, 1963 to 1966.
And it's great that the Maltz has added some local Cleveland stuff too, along school integration and the Stokes and those kinds of issues. Les, thanks so much for taking time here. I know you're very busy. Thanks for spending a few moments with us and showing us around.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here and glad you're here with us. Thank you.
Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. Have a great week in Cool Cleveland.